Hey guys, Nathan Brendan Masters. Yeah, dog, it's about that time. We had that conversation. You know what I'm talking about. We're going to talk about Panasonic G7. Is it still the best entry-level 4K video camera? My opinion's changed. Let's talk about it. Alright guys, the Panasonic G7. Man, you know, this thing has been a workhorse. It does everything you need it to do at the entry level. So is it still the best 4K entry level camera? When it comes to price to performance, it just is, man. It still is. I mean, this camera, you can get it for about 400 bucks. Many times you can get it for under 400 bucks, body only. If you got micro four thirds lenses, or if you have almost any other lens and an adapter, you can use it with this camera. Now, of course, you have your so-called smart adapters and your dumb adapters. If you have a smart adapter, it can interface with electronic lenses, particularly EF mount lenses most of the times what people like to use. If you have a dumb adapter, you just have to manually focus and do everything. You have to do everything manually. As far as I'm concerned, if you're a YouTuber and you need a camera you can do YouTube videos with like this, and then switch from that to doing films and stuff like that, this is the camera for you, man. I mean, a lot of people right now, especially right now, don't have a lot of cash. People are still jumping into YouTube. So you got your flip screen, 4K at 24p and 30p, 1080 at 60p, and of course this is a micro four thirds camera. Some people might see it as a disadvantage, but I can tell you it's truly not. As you know, I shot the film Transit with this camera. One of the best things about this camera is its Wi-Fi connectivity. It's got one of the best apps going right now. I mean, there's a lot of times when I was actually making the film, filming myself with the app. Of course, I made it look like it was happening. I made it look like it was something that was going on in the movie. But at the same time, I'm actually filming myself with the app. It's so intuitive. It's so easy to use. And I mean, man, this camera has got me through videos, obviously a movie. We were actually working on the second Crisis Function film. We were shooting with this camera. Almost every movie I shoot, I use multiple cameras. So I shot with this one. I was using the LX100 as well. I was using my Sony, I think I had a F3 I was using for that. So, but this was the main camera. I also used some action cameras. I used an action camera too for some of that, but this was our main camera. So this was the one that we used for almost everything. And there's some scenes that I look at now and say, man, I should have used the Panasonic for that scene as well. Now, one of the things about this camera when it comes to filmmaking is a lot of these cameras have, the rolling shutter. This camera, the Sony a6300, has horrible rolling shutter. This camera has rolling shutter, but it's not as bad. It's not nearly as bad as a lot of other cameras. Now, the big thing that a lot of people don't like about this camera is micro four thirds. They say you can't get as much bokeh. You can't get good low light, things like that. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, most of my shooting with this camera was at night. You do what you do with any camera. You throw a fast lens on it. If you get a speed booster and throw it on there, you can get extra stops of light. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. People complain about these things. Yeah, everything's not going to be an A7. Everything's not going to let you see in the dark. I will admit myself that these Sonys, best low light in the game. Low light is important to me, but I've shot with this camera at night and I haven't had any problems. I use my fast lens. I use my 20mm 1.7. I really, really like this lens. Use it for everything. Of course, I use that as well as my Canon, my Nifty 50. This is actually a Yongnuo lens that I used. So the Nifty 50. It's the Canon lens. I use it with a dumb adapter though, as opposed to one of the smart adapters, but it doesn't matter. It worked. It worked very well. Now, of course, I have to be actually behind, I have to use this manually, but I mean, it worked. It worked fine. And so this camera will get you through everything. Is it still the best entry-level 4K camera? Yes. Here's the thing. You have options though. If you're looking specifically for the best entry-level 4K camera, there's a good chance that you don't have a lot of money to spend on a 4K camera. So what are the drawbacks of this camera? You guys know what drawbacks are. The autofocus, it's not great. No IBIS. You can use stabilized lenses, of course, but it's still not as good as, say, the G85, which we're going to talk about that. Again, going back to low light, a lot of people have issues with the low light. That I've never had an issue with it, but a lot of people do. A lot of people want that Sony low light, and they want that Sony A7 III kind of low light. Since they know that it's out there, they want it. Never had a problem with this. And on top of that, a lot of people just don't like the micro four thirds sensor. They say it's too small. You can't get that bokeh. You can't get those things, those super cinematic shots. But at the same time, people love this camera, which is also a micro four thirds camera. What? So, yeah, you can get cinematic images with this. This is a great camera to jump into filmmaking, YouTube, whatever you're trying to do. Now, here comes the hard part. I'm probably going to sell this camera. So to keep it real, I was thinking about getting the G85, but I'm like, there's not enough there for me to go ahead and get that. So I'm good with what I have here to make the stuff that I make. And this camera might even go simply because of the fact that the reason I keep this camera around is because of the fact that I have this fixation with the idea that I might be vlogging at night, and I'm gonna want this camera to be able to do that with. But realistically, I'm thinking about getting an Osmo Action. As a matter of fact, Worth It or Not suggested that to me a while ago, and I've thought about it, and that would actually be more useful even than this. And I'm just kind of waiting for the Osmo Action 2 to see if they if they come out with a new one and they have like a 2.0 lens like they did with the Osmo Pocket 2, and if they do that, that might kind of sway me toward that. But I still like this because it has other uses than just vlogging. So I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. One thing that I noticed is that a lot of us tend to have this ideal of what we want to do versus what we're actually doing. And it's one of the reasons why we keep buying cameras. We keep buying cameras because we want to be able to do this. What if I need to do this? What if I need to do that? Now, I say all that keeping in mind the fact that I may want to branch out in the future and do other things. And until that happens, until that becomes a viable option for me, I'm going to stick with these cameras, stick with the cameras I have, and then I'll make a move. Right now, I'm actually thinking about something a little bit different. I'm actually thinking about the Panasonic BGH1, the little box camera. That's simply because of the fact that it's a micro four thirds camera. I'm in the micro four thirds system. It's 10-bit. It has better autofocus. It doesn't have IBIS, but it's a cinema camera. And if I'm at that point where I'm actually buying a $2,000 cinema camera, then I'm at the point where I can buy a gimbal and things like that to, make that viable if need be. So that's where I'm at right now, guys. I'm going to be doing that and moving some of this stuff out of here, getting new stuff, and seeing where we go from there. So other than that, guys, you take it easy. Nathan Brendan Masters. Hasta.
Don't look back, we're here to stay. A life we knew would come one day. And this is it, the borderline to where the future leaves us behind. The fire will burn and never die. The soldiers fall.